The program is a presentation of the weekly credit report. Now, the president of United Credit Consultants, a certified FICO professional and a national credit restoration expert, your host, Joe McGlynn.
Good morning, everyone. You're listening to the Weekly Credit Report, your weekly source, credit topics and education. I am your host, Joe McGlynn, president of United Credit Consultants, Minnesota's largest, most referred credit repair, credit restoration firm. Here this morning, we are live in studio, Twin Cities News Talk, AM 1130. We're taking your calls. Love to hear from you. Our hotline here in the studio is 651-989-5855. Again, 651-989-5855. Any calls, any questions about credit repair, restoration, cleanup, rebuilding tactics, just general questions about credit and just overall topic, give us a call. I'd love to answer those questions. Love to hear your story. 651-989-5855. In studio this morning, I'm joined by Ryan Boyd, Jared Havens, Senior Credit Advisors with United Credit Consultants here. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
I like knowing that we got the two guys back here, and we're going to be talking today solely on understanding and the knowledge behind collection settlement tactics and what are the proactive steps on what to do on those items. And we're going to mix in as well some judgments or public records like Jared said earlier off air. We're going to talk solely on the management, proactive steps, what can be done, what shouldn't be done, when should it be done, and knowing that there's options on tax lien, there's options on judgments, how to manage those correctly to obviously save some money or manage the money that you have better on trying to whittle away at some of these, and how it helps and how it hurts your credit in multiple ways. So let's get into that. Number one, I need to give a shout out to Syracuse, and I know they played today, so I need to throw that out there. And let's get back to topic. Sorry for the Gophers. I don't know last time. That didn't work out too well. But
that's funny to hear you laugh, Jared, because I don't think there's too many people that are listening to us right now that are laughing very hard. And I knew you were going to do that, Joe. You were going to you had to get that shout out to Syracuse, didn't you?
Yeah. That's important to me, you know. Mm-hmm. But let's get into it. Let's start going over some collection stuff, just understanding, you know, I'm going to break out some knowledge here. And obviously, just like any other the show, you know, my two, co-hosts and two of my advisors here, we'll just go through and we're just going to talk about the breakdown of them, the knowledge, the history of credit and credit repair and knowing what can be done on certain topics. Just because we understand this is the whole point of the show here. If you're a first-time listener, it's just getting into the meat of this stuff and just really understanding that the show here is based on knowledge. It's giving you information that credit is one of the most important pieces and one of the most important financial aspects of your life, but yet it's one of the most misunderstood, misguided, gray area topics out there just because a lot of people don't proactively look into credit until they need it. And that's where the problem comes in because you'll never make a decision correctly and clearly when you need something. You're going to be making choices then based on emotion, not reason, and that's always an issue. So when it comes to a collection, unfortunately, a lot of people have them. I mean, it can be from a $40 copay, medical copay that you forgot to pay because you moved. It could be a Verizon bill, could be a T-Mobile, could be a Comcast that you're disputing. Or, you know what, it could be that you fell on some hard times. You lost your job back in the whole crash. And there's some issues there that are negative, that are past, you know, that are 2, 3, 4 years old, that you can't move on. You can't move forward. It's dragging you down. It's rearing its ugly head every time you try to apply for something. And you want to know, really, I have a good job. I'm making X amount of money a year. My wife is, I am, whatever the case is. How am I able to fix this correctly to positively impact my credit instead of me going out and doing certain things and I pay off a company? And I always try to think about what are people's fears. You know, I know so much about this stuff. We live and breathe it.
Yep.
But the problem is, what are the simplistic fears for people? What scares them? You know, I would say number one would be, I'm going to pay off someone that I didn't owe them. That it's a scam. You know, that this company, I read it on Google, I saw it. You know, I shouldn't pay them. Or another fear would be, if I pay them, it won't get reported back to the original debtor, right? That's another huge fear, I know, but that's not the case because the original creditor doesn't owe the debt. But that's not, people don't know any better. You know, I had a client just came in yesterday, had a couple questions, and he said, well, I owe Quest and I owe I forget who the other one he said. I'm like, well, technically, see, that's the thing. You don't owe Quest anymore. That was the original debtor, but they don't owe it. But that's all they remember because that is who they owe. So their first, thought for you is calling Quest, and then it's going to get transferred a million times. So, Jared, go into a little detail. We're going to start off the show here and the topic of today when it comes to collections and just getting some people some information on just the knowledge on collections, how they started, and understanding how do they work, what's their intentions. Give people some information on the very beginning. Let's say we're going to start with this on, let's just make up a name. Macy's. You got a Macy's account that went bad. So if you don't have a Macy's account, enter your medical debt. Enter whatever debt you've had in the past that you've had issues or you're currently having issues. We're going to walk you through the timeline here on the understanding of the life of a debt and how it all really lays out and what happens. So you get to a point where the debt is no longer to be settled or repaid by the normal, it's now 90 days, 120, you're 6 months past due. And these companies now at that point are going to be hiring, or I've already hired, I should say, a third-party collection. Jared, go into third parties and explain a little bit about how those work.
Well, what a third-party collection is, it's a company that the original debtor then decided it's no longer worth necessarily their time to pursue the debt anymore. And what they do is they contract out a third-party collection firm to pursue that consumer for that debt. And what happens is, in that agreement, the third party, the way that they make their money is they make a percentage on what the consumer pays. And so that's a big thing to realize there. If you are being called on right now by collection companies, there's a chance that it's a third party. And when that happens is a lot of times people talk to me and they ask me, well, why can't I get a settlement of X or this amount? But just know when it's a third party, they're going to have certain terms already in place. And when you talk to them, a contract in place, when you talk to them, they tell you they can do this, just know that it could be within their contract.
Contract with?
The original debtor.
Okay.
Exactly.
So going into more detail even, when Macy's, let's just say, they owe the debt or you owe the debt to a company and you don't pay them, that the original debtor will then sign paperwork or already have a contract in place with a third-party collection agency, and the contract will have details within their situation. So it might be, for instance, could be, we won't accept anything less than 90%. Don't even call us. I mean, who knows? It could be 30%, 20%. Doesn't, every company's different. Every situation's different. But there might be times where there is a straight contract where, you might call the company and like, I read online that I could do 10%. And the person's like, the collection company's like, I can't do it. And they're like, well, you're just being hard headed. That's what I read as well. No, it could be the case that there's a contract
in place that states that states specifically that they cannot even approach the original debtor without X amount. And in some cases, just know though, in some cases, if you provide financial documentation and can prove hardship, there are times where we might be able to get a little less of a settlement, but regardless, most of the time it's a third party, they're going to require a higher settlement because at that moment in time, the original debtor still owns it, and then they've hired out a third party to collect.
And the reason that the third party debt is a little harder to negotiate with is two major reasons. Okay, number one, if it's still in a third-party type situation, that means it's a newer debt still. It's not 5 years old. It's not 6 years old. If it's in a third-party situation as well, the reason that's a little harder to settle is because the third-party company does not own the debt. They're just speaking on behalf of the original debtor. So they're not making as much money on the back end. They're only making a percentage of what they end up totaling in from you. So, for instance, if you owe $5,000 to Macy's, again, I'm just using them as an example. Normally, if it's a wholesale collection company 2 years, 3 years down the line, and that wholesale company actually buys the debt for 20 cents on the dollar, there's some wiggle room there because they're only invested into it X amount. But if you have a third-party company coming after you, well, then they're going to have only 30% of what they collect. So they're going to try to collect, all $5,000 because they're going to they're going to make their money back.
So there's multiple hands in the cookie jar too at that point. Everyone's trying to make money on that debt.
And it's and really no one really owns it because if you think about the simplistic thinking of it, Macy's doesn't want to talk about it, but yet they own it. So they give it to a third-party company. This third-party company can speak on behalf of it, but then they can't agree to a term without talking to Macy's. And, like you said, there's just so many, people in their hands are in the cookie jar, knowing that everyone can speak on it, but no one can make a decision really. And everyone wants to try to get as much money as they can. And at the time, the third-party company, it's almost like one of those attorneys where, they don't get paid unless Macy's gets paid.
Yep.
So in other words, Macy's or any of these companies on third parties, they don't pay them. They don't give them any money. So these companies are working solely on commission of knowing that, hey, we don't get paid unless we get some, we get some settlements going here.
So they're trying to get as much as possible.
100%. That's their bread and butter right there.
Yep.
So these debts will go into a third party situation. The issue with third parties is multiple things. Number one, they don't own it for too long. Okay? They only own it for about 3 to 4 months, 90 to 120 days on average. Now, if you're hearing me right, what I'm saying is collection companies will only own the debt for 3 to 4 months at a given time. And the reason is simple. It's all about making money. If they buy a debt or they get a debt from Macy's in bulk and they go after you and they call you and they write you letters and they do all this stuff and they go to that next, because they have 3, 4, 5 different levels within their system, and they'll write the letter. And then the next level would be threatening a little bit, going into a little more detail, a little more aggressive status and things like that. But it gets to a point where they haven't made a penny on it, and they've had employees under their watch, under their, their tax dollars, essentially, calling you, writing you letters. They've invested money. They're not going to sit there. And I ask every client that I've ever sat with, how long on average do you think a collection company owns debt for? And every single one is a little different, but most people have that sense of foreverness, 5 years, 10 years, I don't know, probably forever. Who knows? Knowing my luck, that's kind of the mentality I have with my clients that I've seen, where the answer is not. It's not personal. It's nothing more than it is. It's 3 to 4 months, truly. It's not too much longer than that, because it gets to a point where this doesn't make financial sense to us. We got to move this item out. We got to give it back to Macy's, and then we're going to go and get another bulk of new debt.
Yeah,
right?
They recognize it as they're wasting their time.
Well, it's not time. It's not about time, really, Ryan. It's about money. I mean, these companies they're not a nonprofit. It's about making money, right? So I'm just technical because it's about, look, I'm not here to waste my time. I'm here to make money. That's how collection companies think. And they think if you're listening to the radio, that's why you go to work. You don't go to work to, save time or have fun. It's about making money. How can we profit off these debts? So they call for a while. They go after it for a while. It gets to be 3 to 4 months down the road. There's no money to be made. We're moving on. Let's go on. And then they're going to go and get a new bulk, a new debt, and they're going to go after those people.
Yep.
The problem is that now this debt that you owe, this one debt that we're talking about here, goes back to the original creditor. Okay. Now, if you have a question about this stuff, you have a story to tell, you want to talk about this, maybe you have an issue that we're hitting a nerve on this stuff, give us a call here at the studio, 651-989-5855. Or if you're a little shy or you want to talk a little more in detail to me or one of the advisors, we also have client coordinators in the office right now directly. Give us a call right now. That's 800-455-4100. 800-455-4100. We are located in Twin Cities, Burnsville area. We can meet with you one-on-one, that kind of thing. So going into it, now the debt goes back into the original furnisher. It goes back to Macy's, right? So now Macy's has this debt. So what happens is, and I'm going to take one step back real quick. I don't want to overtalk, but third-party collections still are able to report.
Yep.
So that's another issue that goes on your report. That's a whole new can of worms that we could talk about for another hour and a half, is that right when a debt is into a collection, this is when people get blasted with 1 million different collection letters and forms, and it's almost overwhelming, because even though 3 months or 4 months sounds like a lot, when you turn your back to something at times, time kind of goes pretty quick. So, oh yeah, I haven't paid that Macy's bill in a while, but I've been getting, but a while to someone could be a year. Well, think about it. In 1 year, that debt could have been passed around 3-4 times at that point. So within the last year, you're getting, and these collection companies aren't bashful. They'll send you a letter every other, 3 letters a week. So you've been getting 3 letters a week from 4 different companies at certain points within the last 12 months, that gets to be overwhelming. Like, who the heck even owns this debt? Who do I really owe money to? How is it every time this bill comes in, there's new interest fees, there's new lates? I owed $5,000, now it's at $7,200. What's going on here? Like, who do I even owe? That's because it's getting passed around. A third party is like, we'll take it, we'll try, we'll do our best. We got some pretty hard negotiators in the back there. We'll take on this debt. They'll take it on. They can't get any money. They'll give it back to Macy's. Macy's turns, gives it to another third-party collection company firm. They go after you. So it gets passed around. And some of these 50% of collection companies out there report to the bureaus.
Exactly.